From Synerger, this is Polaris. I'm Chris McNulty. For 20 years, the advice to marketing was the same. Hire specialists, find your niche, and put good people on the accounts. But AI works around the clock, and it never asks for a corner office. This September, Google itself begins quietly upgrading search campaigns to its own AI, whether advertisers asked for it or not. Today, we'll talk with David Pourquery, the founder of GROAS, who is building AI that runs Google Ads end-to-end, and who came to it after deciding, in the midst of a private equity career, that he wanted no boss at all. What if the hardest part of advertising was never the bidding, but knowing what a customer is actually worth to you? This is Polaris. Welcome to Polaris Pathways. I'm your host, Chris McNulty, Chief Technology Officer at Synerger. Synerger, the transformation company, reimagines business for our clients, navigating strategies and leadership culture with ease. Today, I'm happy to introduce David Pourquery, founder of GROAS. David built GROAS into an AI platform that plans, builds, and manages Google ad campaigns on its own. Before that, he worked in venture capital and then in private equity at HIG, while scaling his own e-commerce stores on nights and weekends, where he started writing software to fix the inefficiencies he kept finding in Google Ads. GROAS now runs to nearly 1 million lines of code, and its fastest-growing customer segment, the agencies it was built to replace. David will join us in a few minutes, but first, let's define our terms and our data points. As usual, our reading list and references will be included in the show notes. First, the platform is automating itself. Google has confirmed that starting September 1, it will begin upgrading eligible search campaigns to AI Max, migrating automatically created assets and campaign-level broad matches, and turning on search term matches and text customizations along the way. For a lot of advertisers, that arrives whether they opted in or not. Secondly, the early verdict on that AI is mixed. Independent industry testing of AI Max for search has found underwhelming results so far, with the majority of matched queries failing to convert. Automation is arriving faster than the evidence that it works. Finally, the agency model itself is under real pressure. In February, WPP, once the largest advertising group in the world, announced it was abandoning the holding company structure altogether after a year of steep revenue declines and account losses. When the incumbents restructure, it's usually because something fundamental has changed. Okay, David's waiting in our virtual green room. Let's go. Welcome back. So today, I'm excited to introduce our guest, David Pourquery. David, welcome to Polaris. Where are you calling from today?
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm calling in from Los Angeles today.
Los Angeles is great. Beautiful weather down there. You went on quite a journey. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in London. Now I'm based a bit all over, mostly in the US and Europe.
Do you get back to London often?
I try. So, I left London, I think, officially last year, to be honest. Left it properly, left my flat, left everything. I've been back probably for a grand total of like 2 weeks, maybe a bit less. I have a lot of friends and family there still. I miss it a lot. London is still a great city, but I think in terms of leaving, I have left.
Yeah. I've been fortunate. I've been to London probably over 100 times in my life. So it's quite a familiar city. I love it. I had a friend from Microsoft who worked out in Reading. And for the audience, Reading is about 20 to 30 miles west of London. He told me he was moving to the States. Fabulous. I can't wait to have you here in Redmond. And he said, Chris, do you think I'm daft? I've been living in a cold, dark, rainy place my whole life. I'm going to move somewhere where I can sit by a pool and have barbecues all the time. So he's down in Texas.
Nice.
So
very nice.
I understand the coming to someplace that's warm. So in your background, I know you started in venture capital and moved on to private equity at HIG, which actually set the stage for this. Talk to me a little bit about how from private equity you get to GROAS.
I'll be fully candid, right? Again, apologies to any former colleagues who may be listening, but I think I saw quite quickly, right, putting a year and a half in, that I wouldn't be a longer term fit working parallel. So I was thinking about, okay, what next? Like what sort of avenues or vehicles I could do that would sort of get me to the outcome I was looking for, which was a bit more time freedom, location freedom. So I started basically just playing around with different things online. And I stumbled across e-commerce and dropshipping. And got a little bit hooked on that, to be honest, because there is that dopamine feeling with e-commerce. You start to get your first few Shopify notifications. And I thought I was Jeff Bezos. So anyway, I spent basically a year with all my weekends and any single bit of free time I had during the week. This was probably late evenings. Basically scaling up my own e-commerce dropshipping stores to decent numbers, right? Some to 1 or 2K a day, but all to various levels. And that sort of set the scene for GROAS. I got pretty good with Meta and Google, but it was Google in particular that I started to see some, I think, inefficiencies in the platform, things I want to improve. I've been programming since I was 13, 14, studied computer science at university. So I thought, maybe I might start building some sort of software on Google Ads. I looked around the market. There was nothing really that did what I wanted. And that was, I guess, the origins of GROAS from there.
I would say the last couple of years is fascinating. Lots of stories from our clients, even internally at Synerger, where there's a piece of software that doesn't exist or existed and went away, and people used to just grumble about it. And now there's the possibility of going out and creating it yourself. Take the audience through that a little bit. For those of us who don't work in AI and in go-to-market, what does GROAS mean? Where'd you get the name?
I didn't really start off with a name in mind. It sort of came a bit by accident. I knew what I wanted to build first before coming up with a name. I found that the domain for GROAS.ai wasn't it. Where I was looking around lots of domains, okay, I wanted to be a short, memorable domain. Well, obviously GROAS stands for return on ad spend. It's a pretty well-known term in marketing. There was that play on the words of grow and ROAS. And then also there was the G for Google, given I was starting off with Google.
But it's one thing when it's an experiment, but when it's your own money, it's your own investment, it's your own livelihood. I see an awful lot of folks who talk about this and they come to industry councils that they've tried doing some level of paid placement, and despite their best of intentions, and despite the fact that they are go-to-market professionals, I think they have a much harder time connecting. Has that been your experience as well?
Paid ads is really tricky. I am of the firm belief that not everybody should run paid ads. It's like one of the most competitive things on earth, right? Because if you can get it right, it's effectively a free money printer, right? You put $1 in, $3 comes out. Obviously, that's going to incentivize a lot of people to want to play that game. So you're playing against a lot of very sophisticated market participants, with on top of that compounded the fact that it's simply just got more competitive every single year. So there's more people coming in, there's more competition. CPCs keep going up, whether that's Meta, Google, Bing, all of them. It seems to come. And so, yeah, I mean, it's paid ads is a really, really tricky one. I see a lot of people who maybe have had success with their offers with organic traffic or from referrals. They then want to switch on paid ads, and it's a much longer learning process than they may have anticipated. Right? Sometimes it can take 3-4 months before the machine actually starts working for them instead of against them.
So the machine is, in theory, already working for you. I know Google's announced starting September 1st, they're going to be bringing in AI max automation to campaigns, whether people are expecting it or not. I'd love to get your thoughts. When you see something like that, is that a squeeze in GROAS, or does it create an opportunity for your customers?
I'll be careful how I phrase this, because we have a great relationship with Google. Obviously, they know of us. They've been great supporters throughout. It's a tough. I think a lot of the stuff that Google release around automation and around the new campaign types often is done with the best intentions. The problem is, a lot of those automations take away power and control from the advertiser, right? Which end up meaning sometimes you just give all of it to Google. And if you do that without any sort of guardrails around that, you can end up losing more money than you hoped, right? Or they would take more of your margin than you'd hoped. That's if you're being profitable already, right? So a lot of what we try to do at GROAS is sort of almost counteract a lot of those measures, right? And build stuff in to bring back a level of control back to the advertiser, right? There are countless horror stories you can go online of people just going and applying all the Google's recommended settings and then just burning through thousands of dollars, right? But Google said I should do this. So yeah, it's a tricky one. Again, I think they do a lot of that stuff with the best of intentions. But as the advertiser, you have to ultimately, I think, have the final judgment, right? On whether you apply those settings.
So would you agree or disagree that more dollars on ad spend, usually you see a proportional increase? I know a lot of times if you're an advertiser, you see these setups and the AI is telling you, oh, you need to put more in and you actually need to let it run for 60 days before you make any decisions. That's what the AI says. What do you tell people?
That's a good question. It's extremely case by case dependent, right?
Okay.
There are some things for which, yeah, sure, you do have to let if you're starting a brand new Google Ads account, a brand new campaign, brand new whatever, I would say you need at least 45 days with a decent amount of budget to make the decisions to whether it's going to be like a good thing, right? This is my opinion. If you have already an account that's been around for a while, you have a sense of your numbers, and you're starting out a new strategy, you can, I think, quite quickly kill things. If they're not working out in the first, I would say 1 or 2 weeks, to be honest.
Right.
It's often, if anything, it's a sales tactic by Google reps, and sometimes agencies themselves, right? Who, will say, you should, let it run because it lines their pockets more. So I think that's something you have to be very careful with.
I was thinking about the timing, and you and I spoke a bit about how you made the decision to pivot out of e-commerce that you were doing on the side and run on your own. And you're doing it at a time, certainly the last 12 to 18 months, where AI-assisted software development has really moved to the forefront of what's possible. Would you have tried this 5 years ago?
It would have been impossible. It would have been impossible for me to do this, at least the way I've done it, which is fully bootstrapped, right? I think before, if you wanted to start a company, and any sort of software company, you either were doing it 50-50 with some sort of technical co-founder who was like really, really sharp, and you had like funds to support yourself for a while. And in that case, maybe you could bootstrap it, right? And sort of start from there. But typically, even if people had that, they would still go and raise venture money. I worked in venture capital, so I was very stubborn about not taking any on because I know what that comes with, right? So I think now the speed at which we can deploy new things has gone up by like 20x, 30x maybe, in the last 9 months. So that means we can run basically a lot more lean than we could have had I gone to try to raise some money.
I know that when you started, and it wasn't that long ago, but you were really approaching this with, I think, as much of a services pillar as you were a product pillar. What's changed for you? What have you seen over the last year that's had you rethink that?
Well, we've actually gone back and forth on this quite a few times. So GROAS started off, to be clear, just as a little, like a software DIY, right? It cost, the entry fee for GROAS was, for the first week, it was like $49 a month. Then it was $79. Then it was $99. But like, it was a super low ticket offer, super low ticket price. Because at the time, GROAS only did very basic things, right? It was doing dynamic landing pages. It could give maybe recommendations here and there. But it was assisting, let's say, marketing teams in making the decisions rather than replacing the marketing teams entirely. I quickly saw 3 to 4 months into that where things were headed, which in my opinion was full end-to-end autonomy, right? E.g., there is no need for teams of people to be staring at a Google Ads dashboard all day. That was the firm belief I had like 3 to 4 months into this. So we rebuilt everything from scratch, okay? And positioned GROAS as actually a replacement of human labor, but a productized it, right? And so we released that to the world in January 1st, 2026. After doing that is when we effectively skyrocketed, right? It was all organic, all SEO, all referrals. GROAS literally just did this like 4 months. And it was crazy. It was a crazy time. Came in along learning lessons. It was a fun time. It was during that process that I started to think about, actually, what we found is whenever there was more human, let's say, contact with the client or the customer, e.g., maybe it was a good onboarding call we had, or it was like a bi-weekly check-in that we put in place, they were more likely to stick, regardless of results, regardless of anything else. that's when we started to layer in a bit more of a service component, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think, now we're probably going back more towards the original thesis, which is all of this can actually be productized. And if you do a good enough job on the product, then the human component actually matters less and less. And also you can deliver a better value, a better outcome at actually a cheaper price than if you to include a whole bunch of humans.
So let me stop you on that a bit and ask you to give a little advice to other founders who might be listening to this and thinking, how should I be approaching my market ideas and my IP? So you started with being a little more human capital intensive and then refactored things back to product. How many folks are on your team?
We're about 11 at this point.
So pretty lean, pretty agile. You definitely have pivoted around the services product mix. And you and I chatted about how at the outset, you were very focused on the role of agencies, and agencies didn't necessarily bring clients as much value as they could. How's that evolved for you over the past year?
Well, yeah, look, it's funny, right? Initially we were, we're going to displace the agencies, et cetera, et cetera. Now they're becoming probably one of our biggest, a bigger part of our client set, right? We either serve businesses or agencies, and the proportion of agencies that we're serving is just climbing month on month. And what's ironic in all of this is that they are actually the best customers of GROAS, because they get value from it from day one. They have Google Ads to run year round. It's incredibly efficient for their margins. So in a way, we ended up building something that was actually really, really well built for agencies.
So what does that look like? What does success look like for a customer, for an agency? I'd love you to kind of chat about what kind of results you've been able to help your customers achieve.
Sure. I mean, so it differs whether it's on the business or the agency side, right? So on the business side, we take over ownership of the outcome for that business on Google Ads, right? We're not just a piece of software you plug into. We have to handle everything else that goes into running successful Google Ads, which is a killer landing page, a killer offer, conversion tracking, setup, creative, like the whole shebang into it, right? So that's a lot more involved. Mm-hmm. There's like a lot of results we get. We've got over 100 case studies on our website. That's pretty sort of what happens. The other side, success for an agency looks a little bit different. We don't necessarily own their client outcomes. Like only in rare instances, we don't go in and actually start like building landing pages for their own clients or doing conversion tracking for their own clients. Success for an agency actually is they have a book of customers, right? Maybe it's 10, 20, 100. Success for them is how much of that book can they bring to us confidently and basically run all of their campaigns through GROAS instead of going out and hiring maybe offshore media buyers who they would have paid, a multiple of the price they're paying for GROAS for. So that's what success looks like. It's effectively bringing all of your book to GROAS and then never having to worry about filling for your clients.
So I'm kind of curious, you're in a better position than I am to observe what's happening actually out there in the agency world as a whole. We talked about this in the upfronts. WPP is definitely going through some restructuring. Is that an outlier, or have you seen that agencies themselves are facing a different market reality in 26 than they were just a few years ago?
100%. 100%. Okay. On the PPC side, 100%. The reason is because people have the wrong or right impression. I would say that we can categorize into various components, but at least on the smaller side, on the smaller business owner side, a lot of people say, hey, I can figure out to do Google Ads using ChatGPT, and just talking to ChatGPT can help me set up campaigns and do this and do that. Often they end up finding out the hard way, like 1 or 2 months down the line, that's not maybe super effective in most of the cases. Sometimes it can be. It's tough. It's tougher than you might think. And then the other side is if you're a bigger team at an enterprise or whatever it is, instead of buying off-the-shelf tools and maybe bringing in an agency, you can maybe try build your own tool around your own custom workflows or anything. And that's become a lot easier with Bootstrapping. So I think agencies are getting squeezed in a lot of different ways. I mean, what is an agency, right? An agency has always been an arbitrage on human labor, right? So if the value of human labor keeps going down because of AI, then agencies ultimately, unless they adapt pretty brutally, I think will get squeezed out.
Just as you were saying that, David, I was thinking about a lot of the pressures that have been out there on AI-assisted coding and the so-called SaaS apocalypse. first, I'd love to get your take on that. It occurs to me that there is no shortcut, right? Hearing you kind of walk through, and you're right. You can sit down with ChatGPT and say, design a campaign for me on Google to go do X. And I think people have this misunderstanding that there is a super easy button that you can just start without any prior knowledge and sit down and spend 5 minutes and a full blown perfect campaign just springs out for you automatically. I think you have a choice between going to experts like an agency or finding a place where that expertise is encoded in the software. How do you get people to trust the product as expert instead of the expert as expert?
That was a big challenge in the early days of GROAS. When I was getting on sales calls, saying, hey, like, this will run your Google account end to end. Anything a human can do, GROAS can do, except it does it faster. And a lot of people thought I was just like straight up lying to them or selling vaporware. What I found is that you can't convince a skeptic. You can't. The only way, I think, it's a gradual process, is with as much social proof and case studies as you physically can demonstrate, right? Whether that's a video testimonial, putting them in touch with existing customers or wherever it is. But I think the general lesson I found is it's very hard to convince people who come in with a skeptic mindset. What I found, at least, is people were either all the way on board and were like, look, I 100% believe in AI. I'm AI pilled, quote unquote. I love this. Like, this is exactly what I was looking for. Versus, I'm checking it out. I don't really trust what you're saying. I'm not sure. I'll circle back in like 6 months. You can do whatever you want. You can like literally keep these people, 30, 40 people to contact personally. They will do it and still they won't be convinced. So, it's kind of tough. I think as things change and evolve, in a year's time, those people may move to the other camp.
One of the things in that early discussion I was really struck by when we spoke before is the number of clients you speak to who don't know their numbers going into it, right? Don't know what the operating parameters should be. In your experience, what do you need to know up front before you can even approach GROAS for a successful campaign?
Ultimately, the number is, what can you afford to pay Google for every customer that it acquires for you? Right? If you're selling a product for $500 and your margins are whatever they are, based on those margins, what can you afford to pay Google?
Right.
And you'd be surprised at the number of businesses who don't know what that is. And then even when you lay out maybe you give them an Excel, a financial model to work out how to get to that number, they still end up being a little bit confused or saying, no, well, I'm not sure. So that is really the number one thing, because as long as you have that number, you can scale in accordance with that number. Because if you're hitting that number consistently, you can just keep increasing budget until that goes. And the moment it breaks, then you adjust. That's the basis of GROAS.
Yeah, I'm going to broaden it a little bit further too. You and I chatted about this. So I'm a proponent of New Age marketing, which is a book I'm working on right now as well. And a lot of it's driven by the notion of total product, something I saw at Microsoft. Let me bring it down to brass tacks. What I see is even earlier in the value cycle. Absolutely, you need to know what your numbers are going in. But I see a fair number of organizations that don't even know their words, by which I mean they don't really know who their ICP is, and they don't really know what is their value prop, not how you describe it. They think they have a solution to something, but it's fuzzy and it's vague. And whether it's a piece of software that they built or a service offering or even a product, a hard product, they can't define it well. So I would agree with you about knowing your numbers, but I also think you're not going to be successful if you don't know your words. So in classic marketing, people talk about PMF, product market fit. And so sometimes when you see something that's not connecting, it can be a product problem. It can also be a market problem. How do you know how do you diagnose that? If someone comes back to you, says, hey, we're trying this, but we're not getting the results that we had hoped for in the end. That you're owning those results. How do you diagnose that?
That's really tough. And it does happen, right? Especially with paid ads. Most of the time, I think similar to what you're saying, it's a combination of the offer and the messaging not being clear enough. All right. Messaging is who you want to attract, but also who you want to detract, right? Not everyone is like, whether you're running a lead gen business or e-commerce, you don't want to be appealing to everybody necessarily. And this goes back to like how I was thinking about GROAS in the early days and how you scale an agency, which is typically actually want to niche down, super niche into one set of customers. We've gone a bit the other approach, but that's another topic. But yeah, messaging, I think, is the big one. So not speaking enough to your niche, and then also offer, right? Like you have to have some form of, whether it's a pricing issue, it's a guarantees issue, it's not having enough social proof. All of these things come to play when constructing a good offer, right? For cold traffic. And the other thing as well, which I will say, is, I'm not sure how to phrase this well, but I'll give you one example.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say your offer was, because this is just what we've seen, like in a lot of cases. If your offer is around optimization of an existing process,
mm-hmm.
right? That is going to be harder to run paid traffic to, instead of if you are selling.
Right.
Cold traffic. Now to warm traffic, that might be just the same. But at least if you're selling to cold traffic, the idea of selling new money or a new benefit that wasn't there before is a lot more important. One example is like somebody was selling like CRM optimization. We will go into your CRM and like find all the old leads and then reactivate them. That doesn't perform a contract. Like I can tell you 100% that just doesn't perform a contract. If they were positioning it a little bit differently, right? We will go and find brand new people in your ICP and message them for you, whatever. That does perform a contract. So that's a big distinction that we found as well.
Yeah, I do think people need to think through it as they're engaging their markets. I mean, AI is only amplifying what you already have. And if you haven't created that sense of urgency, it's hard to break through. Like, don't you want better data in your CRM system, to take your example? Absolutely.
Right.
As opposed to your CRM inaccuracies are why you are failing in the market relative to your competition. Well, unless you do this, you'll be out of business in 2 years. Those kind of wartime frames, they can get old too, but I think that urgency becomes super important. So we've been talking around this subject for a bit about what AI lets you do, what AI empowered. You, David, have been able to do a lot with AI, as many of us have. And AI is also accelerating just the volume of content that's out there. First and foremost, how do you cut through it? How can you establish authenticity in a world that's increasingly full of more and more and more just generated slop?
Really tough. That's why, to be honest, I'm making a bet on long form content, right? Whether that's podcasts or like you have your own YouTube channel where you do like in-depth tutorials or in-depth talks or whatever it is. I think long-term content is a lot more, it's a lot more protected. It's AI slop, right? You can generate any amount of reels like quite quickly and get that sort of get some traffic behind that.
I was chatting with a B2B sales leader 2 weeks ago, and what she mentioned to me is they're putting a premium on flying people to cities, because in a world where everyone's gotten used to Zoom and Teams and AI, you can't fake a face-to-face meeting. You said something fairly provocative to me, which is, in the long run, a lot of white-collar work is going to get automated out of existence. So if that's right, what's left for people in marketing?
That the big picture, things like big picture strategy, big picture decisions, that's where really you need the humans, and that's where. But what we found actually is with our own systems or our models, with our own training data, we can get that right. Probably even sometimes better than our own strategists, right? So it's really tough. And I don't want to like spread like fear and doom. I think our big thesis, to be honest, why we're going back to the more productization model, is that AI will cause major margin compression on all forms of computer work longer term. This is what I believe. This applies to lawyers, doctors, accountants, investment bankers. I think on a long enough time frame, there will be probably a lot more abundance than people think. I think Elon Musk also talks a lot about this. He often talks his own book up a lot. So I think he's exaggerating on the time frame as to which that happens. But I think on a long enough time frame, that's probably where we're headed.
Are you seeing it also, bringing it back to your bailiwick, are you seeing that playing out with Google's own pricing, with Meta's own pricing? Like, are their margins getting squeezed? Are they being forced to come down?
That's ironic. I would say they're making more money than ever right now. I think they're too effective. Ultimately, they're in the attention economy, right? So the more people come online, which is a continuing trend, the more money they take. I think Google last quarter had their best quarter ever. I don't see that stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, what's funny in this realm is we've seen in our own experiments that even in the B2B space, Meta does better than I always expect. I can see 5% engagement on the right Meta campaign where, if Google gets to 1%, I'm thrilled. But again, that's our own experimentation. So this is the part of the podcast where I welcome our guests to share something from outside the world of business and outside the world of technology, something in the world of pop culture. It could be a television program, a song, a movie, a book, something that's had an impact on you. What is one of those elements you'd like to share with our audience?
I think probably a book that had a pretty big impact on me. Maybe it's a bit cliche, but a lot of people know it's a book. But the book is called Sapiens.
Okay.
That sort of, I was really young as well when I read it. But that book started to reframe a lot about how I thought about, I guess, leadership, communication, like the structures that surround the world. I think that in particular started to, how should I say this? I think often in my life before, I was often quite, maybe stubborn, right? Stubborn and like straight to the point and trying to sort of figure out stuff myself.
Right.
That book, I think, highlighted the importance of teamwork, right? Ultimately, what makes humans, even in the age of AI, what makes humans powerful is our ability to coordinate on very, very large scales. And that's why we've been able to take over the planet. So I think that book was reframed a lot of my thinking in my youth.
That sounds incredibly positive. I love hearing that. Of course, we'll be sharing a reference to that in our show notes. What's next for you and for GROAS, and how can the audience stay in touch?
So I think we kind of got to a point where we sort of completed quote-unquote paid search. Like we spent a long time getting it to where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
What's next, and was always going to be the natural transition, was building out a separate offering, a separate product, which we've been going on in pursuit for the last 3 to 4 months, which is now all around organic search, right? Which is how can you show up in AI answers for free, effectively, right? Instead of having to pay to show up in the top Google Ads result or Meta, how can you show up in organic? That's a much, much, much harder problem to solve than the paid ad stuff we've been doing. Much more expensive. The good news is, though, I think, with it, everybody should be trying to do this, right? Not everybody should run paid ads, but everybody should be trying to make sure they show up organic, right? So that's like the next big thing that's keeping us occupied. And yeah, you can find out more about us at GROAS.com, GROAS.com.
Fabulous. Folks, David Pourquery, he's the founder of GROAS. He builds AI that runs Google Ads and Meta programs end to end. He's got his new platform and his new offer launching later this month. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. It was a pleasure.
We'll be right back. Up next on Polaris Events. The back half of the year is not slowing down. Here's what we're watching. TechCon 365 Seattle returns August 24th through 28th at the Seattle Convention Center downtown. We'll join our colleagues from across the community and Microsoft with our latest news and guidance on AI and Microsoft 365. TribalNet 2026 runs September 20th through 24th in Dallas, Texas. TribalNet 2026 runs September 20th through 24th in Dallas, Texas. We are proud again to sponsor Native American tribal technology leaders there. The North American Collaboration Summit will be October 4th through 6th in Branson, Missouri, one of the friendliest rooms in the Microsoft community, thanks to good friend Mark Rackley. Collab Days New England will be October 16th in Burlington, Massachusetts, a single day and well worth the trip, even if only to speak with Mark Cashman. Microsoft Ignite, November 17th through 20th in San Francisco, California. I'm looking forward to that one as well. Finally, ESPC 26 will close out the year November 30th through December 3rd in Amsterdam. We'll have details on all this and more in our show notes. You can learn more at Synerger.com/events, and we'll add more events throughout the year. And if you have an upcoming event you'd like us to promote on Polaris, please get in touch, and we'd be happy to include it. And now for a moment of reflection. David said something I haven't been able to shake, that on a long enough timeline, AI compresses margins across every type of computer work. Lawyers, doctors, accountants, bankers, and he's not sure what's left for the humans. That's a big claim. So this month, the New York Times went and looked at the closest thing we have to a live experiment. There's a small shop on Union Street in San Francisco called Andon Market, and its manager, an AI agent named Luna. Not a chatbot bolted onto a store, the manager. Luna hired the staff over the phone, writes the schedule, negotiates salaries, runs payroll, and answers everything the employees message her on Slack. Andon Labs gave her $100,000 and one instruction: turn a profit. Here's the first surprise. It's not Skynet. It's a nice shot. It smells great, the lights are on, and the people behind the counter seem happy to be there. 26 requests for time off? 26 requests were granted by Luna. When an employee remembered a friend's graduation was the next day and nobody could cover, she offered to skip it. Luna told her to go, and the store closed for the day. Employees have been late 27 times, and she's never issued a warning. The second surprise? In 4 months, Luna has burned through about $62,000 of that $100,000. She orders inventory nobody wants. She once offered an employee a personal cash advance over Venmo. She does not have a Venmo account. She posted someone else's salary in Slack, publicly. She gave the man who asked for a raise, then declined the woman who asked the next morning, and only fixed the pay gap after the Times wrote about it. So what do we learn? Not that AI can't manage. Luna manages. She's responsive. She's fair-minded. She's more forgiving than many bosses we've encountered. What she can't do is hold the line between kindness and consequence. She has no felt experience of what a closed Saturday costs because she's never had to explain a bad quarter to anyone. Which brings me back to what David said about know your numbers. Luna had a goal. She didn't have judgment about the trade-offs behind it. I don't think the humans go away. I think humans move. What's disappearing is executing that plan. What doesn't disappear? Deciding what the plan is worth and being willing to say no to something reasonable because you can see the cost of yes. Luna approves everything. That's not a technology problem. That's what accountability looks like when nobody has any. Next time on Polaris, I'll be sitting down with Bill Barkovic and Michelle Boyd to discuss tribal technologies and our upcoming appearance at TribalNet in Dallas, the premium technology conference for tribal technology leaders throughout North America. Don't miss it. Well, that's a wrap for another episode of Polaris. I'd like to thank our guest, David Pourquery, for joining us and sharing his thoughts on autonomous AI in advertising and what it means for agencies and go-to-market. We encourage you to check out our show page for links to everything we talked about today and more. Visit us at polaris.synerger.com. Send us your questions and feedback for the Synerger team. You can reach us via email at polaris@synerger.com. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. And follow us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Polaris is produced with help from Riverside FM. Our theme song, Alternative Dream, is provided courtesy of Adobe. Additional music and sound provided by Indie Guy Records. Graphic design by Josh Brantley. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris McNulty, and this has been Polaris, a show that charts the course for business and technology transformation from Synerger. Learn more at Synerger.com. See you next time. Keep following your North Star.